So the channel brings me to Clapham Junction Station, one of the busiest interchanges in London, and I'm on platform 16 here and waiting for one of the weirdest services in London, that being the Southern service.
Otherwise, you may have to pay a penalty fare.
Sorry about that. I'm waiting on platform 16 for the Southern service, which takes you up to Watford Junction of all places. So it will arrive in about 20 minutes, and I'll get on that. Let's go. Normally, if people want to travel from London to Watford, they would head over to Euston Station to board one of the many North Western Railway services that take them up to Watford Junction. But what people may not know about is an hourly Southern service that runs between East Croydon and Watford Junction via Clapham Junction, and I wanted to try this for myself, starting at Clapham Junction. Now here's my train pulling in on platform 16 at Clapham Junction. It is a 5-car class 377-7, and yeah, I'll take this all the way up to Watford Junction. Let's go.
Speak to a member of staff if you need further assistance.
Calling at Imperial Wharf, West Brompton, Kensington Olympia, Shepherd's Bush, Wembley Central, Harrow and Wealdstone, and Watford Junction. The next station is Imperial Wharf.
So this train usually head into Victoria. It's a Southern service, but we are not. This is where the fun part of this service begins. Now, a bit between East Croydon and Clapham Junction for the train is fairly normal, so we're not going to cover that bit. We're just going to cover a bit from Clapham to Watford. So it usually takes about like 40 to 50 minutes.
Welcome aboard the Southern service to Watford Junction. The next station is Imperial Wharf.
Okay, so this track merges up with the West London line, which is operated usually by the Mildmay line of the Overground, with services from Clapham to Stratford via Willesden Junction. And now we go underneath the main tracks. Now let's talk about the route that the Southern train operates. Once leaving Clapham Junction, it goes underneath the South Western and Brighton main lines onto the West London line, alongside the Overground trains. It then changes power sources around the older Common and Willesden area, before merging onto the West Coast main line, and then stopping at Wembley, Harrow and Wealdstone, and then Watford Junction, running alongside the London North Western Railway and Avanti West Coast trains in the process. Okay, this is the Thames.
We are now approaching Imperial Wharf.
And that's the northern bank of the Thames. It looks very regenerated. It feels a bit like Gunwharf Quays in Portsmouth, this waterfront area. Chelsea Football Club Stadium. I don't remember what it's called, but anyways. West Brompton. where it connects with the district line. And the next station also connects with the district line. Can Olympia. There's the district line to West Kensington. And behind the shrubs, this is where the district line runs alongside until Olympia.
We are now approaching Kensington Olympia.
This is the single track for the district line. Now the train comes in on the main Olympia platforms. This is Shepherd's Bush, Western London round it.
We are now approaching Shepherd's Bush.
And then the next stop is Wembley Central, which actually it takes anything like 16 minutes to travel between the two stations directly on one train. I'll explain why.
This is Shepherd's Bush.
Anyway, next stop is Wembley Central. The train will pass through the older Common and Wilson area in order to change electric source. I mean, we're still on the third rail lines, but once we get to like older Common Wilson area, we'll need to switch onto the overhead power source. You know, because the West Coast Main Line is overhead power. And we would need to stop somewhere along the line in order to change power, whereas the overground trains do it on the move for some reason. Why can't the Southern train do that? You can already see the first sign of overhead catenary. You can hear the train powering down, and it will then power up again. Now we're powering up again, with the pantograph up. And we're on the move again. I don't understand why the train has to stop in the middle of the tracks in order to change power. I mean, it should do it at either a station or on a run-round loop or something. But why does it have to stop in the middle of the track? I mean, if a station existed in, like the interchange with Older Common, possibly known as Hythe Road, you could do it there instead of just in the middle of the track. Now there's a sign that doesn't pop up on a destination, on a PIS. It says, "Welcome to class 377. That's weird. Anyways, this is the North Pole Depot. So the Great Western trains, like stables, the older common area anyway. And this is where we cross the Great Western Main Line on a bridge. There's Older Common Station in the distance. Here's the Grand Union Canal. And the overground trains head to the left and then right to head into Wilson Junction High Level, where the trains will continue on along the North London line to Stratford. But we're not. And this could be the site of Hythe Road Station in the future. If it goes ahead in order to have interchange with Older Common. And the power switch could be done here instead of just in the middle of the track. Yeah, this spot here is so bleak. It's the EMR London Wilston. It's so bleak. Now we have to merge onto the West Coast Main Line via a series of points and junctions. I mean, seriously, why is this not simplified? If it was simplified, then the Southern service could just run more often. Yeah, this part of the service really is boring. So boring, in fact. But it'll get slightly better once we pass Wembley Central. This is the tracks that the Overground uses. We go under them, as Wilson Junction is on the right side. Okay, now we just speed up for a little bit, and then we have to go underneath the fast tracks of the West Coast Main Line, and then merge onto the tracks that the Northwestern services to Tring and Milton Keynes use. And there has to be space in that timetable in order to allow for the Southern train to use it. Like, why can't they just revamp the timetable? I'll explain what can be done to the service later. This is where we cross underneath the fast tracks and then merge on the other side. Not to mention the fact that Wembley Yard is around here as well, so that involves the train having to negotiate an incredibly complex series of points. There's the Wembley Stadium somewhere over there. I mean, you can't see it well. That's the Northwestern to Tring. Then here's where we have to merge with the West Coast Main Line. Specifically these two tracks here, the one closest. We have to merge onto those in order to, like, you know, continue on. There's one of the Evero trains. And this is actually the point where we meet up with the Southern service that return from Watford Junction. Okay. Now we're officially onto the West Coast Main Line. God damn, that was long. There's a footbridge here. Behind those shrubs is where the Bakerloo line comes in, into Wembley Central.
We are now approaching Wembley Central.
Yeah, Wembley Central on the fast lines is only served by Southern trains. I mean, the North Western Railway does not stop here, which is so dumb. But I mean, why does the Southern service only call here, but not the North Western Railway? Yeah, the platform here is so overgrown. And these platforms here just look abandoned. And now we're officially on the West Coast Main Line. Now we can start going fast again. This is the Chiltern Main Line.
Welcome aboard the Southern service to Watford Junction. The next station is Harrow and Wealdstone.
And the faraway tracks are the DC, Bakerloo, and Watford DC lines. The Lioness line. This is South Kenton. My god, the platform here is overgrown. So bad. Even the track is. But anyway, this is the bridge that carries the Metropolitan line.
We are now approaching Harrow and Wealdstone. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
This is the northern terminus of the Bakerloo line. Okay, this is Harrow and Wealdstone. We'll leave the station. And the next stop will be Watford Junction.
Welcome aboard the Southern service to Watford Junction. The next station is Watford Junction.
Hatch End. The previous one was Headstone Lane. Park. This is the better version of South Kensington in my opinion. Even at the end of the station is boring. Yeah, my GoPro powered off for some reason because it was quite hot, but anyway, this is Bushy Station. Now, the train doesn't actually stop at Bushy because it has to get to the points at Watford Junction in time, so the Southern service doesn't have time to stop here. Okay, this is the town of Watford itself.
We are now approaching Watford Junction, our final destination. Thank you for travelling with Southern. Please remember to take all your belongings with you when you leave the train. You cannot use Oyster or contactless payment beyond this station. Please leave the train here or you may have to pay a penalty fare.
Okay, now we're on the track that leads into platform 10 at Watford, which is really only used by the Southern service, whereas some Northwesterns can terminate on this platform. I mean, it's enough to hold like a 10-car train or 12-car train in. Alright, and this is Watford Junction Station on platform 10. The Southern train has about a half an hour wait before it heads back to East Croydon via Clapham Junction. Now, before 2022, the Southern service used to go much further. It went all the way to Milton Keynes, and even back in the 2000s, it went even further. So what happened? Let's explain the history. The birth of this service goes all the way back to 1997, when the predecessor to Southern, Connex South Central, introduced a service between Rugby and Gatwick Airport, using the dual voltage Class 319 trains. It stayed like this until around 2000, when the service was cut to Watford, with some terminating at Milton Keynes, but extended beyond Gatwick Airport to Brighton via the West London line. The entire service was withdrawn in 2002 due to capacity constraints on the West Coast Main Line while it was being upgraded. Connex then lost the South Central franchise, to be replaced by Govia Thameslink Railway, who branded the network as Southern, a brand still held to this day. But the service operated by the South Central franchise was still non-existent, as during this time, Virgin Cross Country, the predecessor to the current Cross Country, used to operate a service between Brighton and Manchester via the West London line. However, this service was withdrawn in 2008. Southern ultimately reintroduced the West London route in February 2009 as a shorter version of the former cross-country service, initially running between Brighton and Milton Keynes via the West London line. This service used modern Class 377-2 trains, which were dual voltage to operate on both third rail and overhead wires. Although for a brief period in 2009, Southern actually leased a fleet of Class 350-1s from London Midland to operate this service, due to a shortage of Class 377-2s at the time. It worked out in the end, and the service stayed as it is, albeit with the curtailment of the service at its southern end between Brighton and South Croydon and eventually East Croydon. The next major change came in 2022, when Southern axed the section between Watford Junction and Milton Keynes, forcing all Southern trains to terminate at Watford Junction, with 3 services a day extending to Hemel Hempstead in the peak, with the train terminating on the through lines of the station, which literally blocked the line for the Northwestern trains. Like, why didn't they just upgrade and extend this bay platform at the station to allow for the 5-car Southern train to terminate there instead? Why did they terminate it on the through lines? Thankfully, the limited service was removed in June 2024, and Watford Junction remains the terminus for all Southern trains using the West Coast Main Line. However, there is still one piece of evidence that still suggests that the Southern service goes up to Milton Keynes. On the A to Z departure board at Clapham Junction, Milton Keynes is still shown as a destination, despite the fact you can't actually reach Milton Keynes directly anymore from Clapham Junction. So, what does the future hold for this quirky little service here? Now, I have a rather ambitious proposal for the service. For starters, I would make the Southern service run 2 trains an hour between East Croydon and Watford Junction, with one of them calling at Bushy Station and continuing further north. Coupled with the Northwestern services, that would see a train every 10 minutes at Harrow and Watford on the slow lines. In terms of extending the Southern service, I would make 1 Southern train an hour continue beyond Watford Junction and head up as far north as Bletchley, where the train would split in 2, with one of these sets heading up to Bedford along the Marston Vale line. This would involve electrifying and upgrading the line and stations to allow for the 377s to operate the line. Coupled with the East-West Rail project and Universal Studios Great Britain, I think this is a perfect time to upgrade the line, now. The other set would continue along the West Coast Main Line to Milton Keynes Central, Wolverton and Northampton, where it would terminate. I would also extend the service at its southern end, with 1 Southern train an hour continuing beyond East Croydon to Gatwick Airport and possibly reusing an old branch line that went towards East Grinstead High Level from 3 Bridges. Now, my vision would have a lot of benefits. The biggest one is that if advertised to passengers well, it can take pressure off of a lot, and I mean a lot, of existing central London rail terminals, especially Euston and Victoria, which are already dangerously overcrowded. This service can also take pressure off of some of the capital's busiest tube lines, especially the Victoria line. The service can also save passengers money by avoiding the Zone 1 area. Currently, a journey from Clapham to Watford on the Southern service costs £5.60 in the peak, compared to over £13 going via Zone 1. Another example could be a journey from Watford to Gatwick Airport. By avoiding the Zone 1 area, the current fare is £18.60 during the peak, compared to £22 going via Zone 1. Either changing at Euston for the Victoria line and heading down to Victoria for the Gatwick Express service, or this option that suggests taking the Thameslink service from St Pancras. Now, this proposal still has a lot of problems, but the main one is that the West Coast and Brighton main lines are already quite busy, so there isn't much space to fit an extra 1 or 2 trains an hour on these busy lines. Also, reopening the Crawley Down branch line and electrifying the Marston Vale line could be expensive and take decades to complete. I think all of this can't be undertaken until HS2 opens, which will free up capacity on the West Coast Main Line. Or maybe an alternative future could see the Southern service withdrawn on the West Coast Main Line entirely in favour of an Elizabeth line extension to Watford and Tring. Instead, the service could just be reduced to a shuttle service between Clapham Junction and East Croydon, but this could significantly impact cross-London travel between the north and the south. So at least for now, the Southern service to Watford will remain as it is, still providing an important service between the West Coast and Brighton main lines. Okay, it's now been 2 hours since the previous Southern left, because the one that was supposed to come in was apparently not running. So this is the next Southern. I'm not going to take this though, unfortunately, because I just want to get back to Euston instead, because that's closer to where I'm going next anyway. It now has a half an hour wait on platform 10. So that is the Southern service up to Watford Junction, and I'll end the video, but I won't take the Southern service back. I'll instead be taking the Northwestern services, which are more frequent into London, from platform 9 here at Watford Junction. Right? Yeah, so I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye to the Southern service, for now at least. So, yeah, I'll be seeing it again soon. Thanks for watching.